An outage in Microsoft's cloud services and related apps caused a massive IT glitch, crashing computer systems around the world. Airports, hospitals and businesses have been affected, with their computers shut down or unable to access networks. Now, here in Singapore, Changi Airport isn't spared, but self-service check-in counters are now progressively resuming. Now, for more on what is happening at Changi Airport, we're now joined by CNA's Sherlyn. Sherlyn, welcome. So you were at the airport earlier, Sherlyn. What exactly did you see? Was it like a scene of mass confusion and chaos?
Well, certainly it was many hours of frustration and exasperation from, hundreds of passengers basically stuck in limbo there. They can't even check in because it's all affected by the IT outage. So I reached there at about 4 p.m. together with one of my colleagues, and we fanned out to 2 terminals in Changi Airport because we understood that the services were mostly disturbing the low-cost carriers. So, for example, in Terminal 4, it was Jetstar and AirAsia, and at Terminal 1, where I was based at, it was Scoot low-cost carrier that was the most affected. And you could really see the queues snowballing, because if you look at Scoot, for example, they have, at least 5 flights within the span of just 2 hours. So that definitely would just snowball when people can't check in and queues were forming. So in fact, what I saw when I went there was that people couldn't check in using those self-service counters, and instead, if they tried to basically get their boarding pass from those counters, what they would get instead is this slip. And it's basically saying, proceed to the counter for assistance. And it says that this is not a boarding pass. Whereas usually in the normal scenario, what you get is your boarding pass straight away. Yep. But in this case, the self-check-in counters were down. And a lot of these low-cost carriers were affected because they are the ones that use quite heavily these check-in systems.
Okay.
So instead of that, they have to go to the manual check-in counters. And because of that, so the airport staff, they put out whiteboards, basically listing each flight. For example, Scoot, I could see, for example, like 8 flights just listed out there, telling them which manual counter to go to, because it was just chaos. People were just trying to figure out which row to go. So the airport staff were trying to do that. And there were really a mix of emotions. Some were very angry and frustrated. They were worried that they would miss their flight. But there was also a different pool of people who were quite calm because their flight was a few hours away and they were pleased with what the staff were tending to them for. But let's have a listen to what some of them had to say.
我们来到这边是2点啦，然后我们要排进去登记的时候，他的电脑全部坏了，所以我们就在这边等咯。等几个小时了？等差不多2个小时多了。
We had this news about the IT outage, from CNA also, and then our friends forwarded us. So we are like, oh, okay, it looks like we have to come earlier, and thankfully we did, because we have to queue for quite a while already.
Yeah, and as we were saying, there were passengers worried that they would miss their flights. And in fact, some had already missed their flights because they were, held up by the queues. But the airport staff were there on hand to handle queries. And the aviation authorities, they also said that they enlisted the help of home teams, some officers on the ground to help with affected passengers. And in fact, all the footage you're seeing right now is actually what me and my colleague, we filmed on our own phones because security there was quite tight. We were not allowed to use our TV cameras to film anything. And in fact, my Chinese news colleague was even stopped from filming on her own phone. So you could sense how this whole situation was. But even now, my colleague Rachel, she still is on site to give us the latest updates as they come.
So that must have been a mad scramble for the team. So what is the latest there? Is Rachel, your colleague, is she still there trying to get information for us?
Yes. So she's still there. She's feeding me information, trying to find out what's happening on the ground, the latest. And what seems to have resumed is that services at the self-checkout counters we were talking about, they seem to be resuming. Some staff can be seen assisting the passengers getting their boarding passes through these machines. But Rachel did tell me that it's getting a bit stuffy at moments because every time there are flights coming up, then the queues would form again. Some people are even camping on the ground, just waiting for the latest updates. And the manual whiteboard we're talking about as well has been constantly updated, giving information on the rows they should go to and flights, and to see whether the check-in is possible or, in the worst-case scenario, flights may be cancelled. But I understand that the crowd ebbs and flows because it depends exactly when there are flights. But we do know that some who have flights, even after 3 a.m., they did come as early as 9 p.m. just to make sure that the situation is okay, that they can still fly to the destination country. But even then, we also saw, they've been taken care of. There was snacks and water given out to them. And in the latest update, Singapore Airlines has also confirmed that operations at its service center and reservation hotlines are all back to normal. But it's not just aviation, because the software update did affect some other services. And we understand that in Singapore, the publishing of newspapers, for one, and even some car park gantries, these were all affected. And we understand from the government that the bearer arms of the affected car park gantries had to be manually lifted to allow the motorists to enter and exit, and are now progressively resuming operations.
Well, Sherlyn, I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you on this story, but thanks for keeping us updated. That was Sherlyn Seah talking to us about the impact of the global IT outage that has hit businesses, including Singapore's Changi Airport. Digital Development and Information Minister Josephine Teo says her ministry has been monitoring the situation. It's also assisting companies to help them recover from the outage. On social media, Mrs. Teo says essential services still continue, and this includes those provided by the government, banks, telcos and hospitals. The minister also acknowledges that some organizations in Singapore have experienced disruptions which affected users. Now, on its part, the Singapore Cyber Emergency Response Team, or SingCERT, has issued an advisory with steps to help administrators and users cushion the impact of the outage.